Hi everybody, welcome to the second of the two Section 1 videos. Hopefully by now you have watched the learning plan video, the introduction to the course video I should say, and the web app architecture video. In this one I'm going to walk you through Hello World in PHP. It's a little bit more involved than you might expect from other languages. So let's start by talking software. You're going to need two pieces of software for this. They are on Apps Anywhere. But I think that you should download and install them on your own. If we go over here into modules, under resources, you will find Visual Studio Code, VS Code, and XAMPP. So if we click here, you can download VS Code. And if we go back, oops, actually, that's wrong. We want to go to the next one. And to the next one. The next one is XAMPP here, which you can download. Now XAMPP is supported on Windows, Linux, and Mac, which is the main reason why it's the one of choice for us. There is another option for this piece of software, which I'll discuss when we get there. So what you want to do is download and install each of these things. Visual Studio Code is a code editor. Now you don't need Visual Studio Code necessarily. You could do this with any Notepad or any other editor you want. This one is really nice though. It's my personal favorite one. The reason I started using it, actually, to be honest, is because I was teaching a higher level web course and I was recommending a different IDE, but all the students were using this one. And when I went and took a look at it, I could see why. It's a really nice code editing environment. So this is my recommended one, and this is the one that I'll be using with you guys. XAMPP. What is this? This is a server bundle. So if we just go take a look at the Module 1 guide, so you'll find that under Modules, close that one up, under Module 1. The first thing in every module is the guide, which is a big PDF document. Here's what it looks like here. I suggest you download it. Don't try and read it through Canvas. I already did a video about this part of it, but just to quickly recap, this is the overall architecture, a client-server architecture for web apps. Here's a picture of just what we're doing now. This is from the slide that I showed you. We are going to create web pages that are going to run in a client's browser. And some of those web pages are going to have script in them. A script meaning programming commands, programming language commands written in PHP. When the user, say, asks for your, let's say, index.php file, the server will retrieve it. It will notice that there's script in it. It will run that script, and that script helps it create the HTTP response that it sends back. So the PHP script is going to help you make custom web pages that, even though they're the same address, may not look the same for each user. And eventually we'll hook it up to a database and so on. Now the reason why I'm mentioning all this now is because it's in order to run a PHP script, you need a server that is running PHP, running the PHP programming language. And we have one at CS Unix that you used for your HTML and CSS projects. Eventually we will get you handing in there. But for now, the best way to work is offline by turning your local machine, your laptop or your desktop computer, into a web server. Okay, so that's what we get when we download XAMPP, is we get a web server. It is running, it's XAMPP stands for cross-platform. The X is for cross-platform. The A is for Apache. The P's are for PHP and Perl, the two languages that are bundled with it. And the M, I think is for MySQL, but I notice here it says MariaDB. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but it will contain MySQL. MariaDB might be a brand name for MySQL, which is the database part of it. Okay, so when you download and install that, hopefully all will go well. Let XAMPP install itself where it wants to install it. It's not going to put it in program files or program data or any of the usual places on Windows. Not sure about Mac and Linux, but it's going to want to install it directly off the C drive. So if you want to see where mine is installed, if you just go to the C drive here, it's right off here. So here's program files, here's XAMPP. And that's important because it needs permissions and so on. So let it install itself where it wants to install it. And we're going to have to work out of this folder, and I'll show you how that works in a moment. Okay, so once you've got both of these pieces of software, you can start up XAMPP. You see I have a quick link for it down here. So XAMPP is the first thing that you need to get going. And you'll get this control panel, and at the same time you'll get a task tray icon down here, which you can use. If you click it, double click it, you can open up this, this control panel. If you close this, XAMPP will still keep running. Apache is the web server that has PHP built into it, so we're just going to start that. And once it's started, you'll see the ports that it's installed into here, that it's using. The port is important. For most of us, I think it's a little bit out of date in the guide. If you run through Apps Anywhere, I think the port that you'll want will be 1080. The standard web port is 80. So if you don't specify a port number, it's just 80. But Apache installs here on 8080. So this is the port that we're going to be using. That's for HTTP. 443, I think, is for HTTPS. I could be wrong about that. But this is the port here. So you remember that port number. And then now my machine is now a web server. If I knew the IP address, another machine on my LAN could connect to this computer as well. But we can connect with localhost. But you have to remember to put the 8080 after a colon. So localhost is an alias. You can see it here for 127.0.0.1. Whoops. And normally, if you don't put a port number, it's just port 80, but which is the regular web port. But we installed it on 8080. Whoops. Why is it not allowing that? These are old projects that I've worked on. All right, I might have messed up my thing here. You should see a dashboard here. If everything is installed correctly, you'll see your localhost dashboard installed here. So my server is working, but it says object not found. If it's not working, then you'll get something more like this. It'll hang for a while, and then it'll say the site can't be reached. So as long as you're getting something for localhost 8080, then your server is up and running. You can also always check it in the, if you double click here, there it is, or right click, you should be able to see your everything running up here. Okay, so that's XAMPP. The other piece of software is Visual Studio. This is the code editor. Again, I have a quick link here, which I'm going to run. Once you've got it, the first thing that you should do is go into extensions, which is right here. You click here, and there are two extensions I want you to get. One is Beautify, and the other one is PHP IntelliFence. These are just code support for IntelliSense and for auto formatting of your code in here. So this one is for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and this one is for PHP. And they're pretty easy to install. You just type Beautify here, and eventually it will find you in the list here. You'll see it. You want the one by HookieQR. Again, I don't really care which extensions you use here, but these are the ones that I like the best. So PHP IntelliFence is the other one. Okay, so make sure you've got those two extensions. All right. So the next thing to do, once that's all up and running, and I'm hoping you guys are stopping and performing the steps and then restarting. So by now I'm hoping that you have XAMPP running, you've got Visual Studio Code installed and the two extensions that I talked about installed. The next step is we're going to go get Module 1 code here. So I'm going to click that and then download it. I'm going to open it here. This is a zip file, so you have to unzip it or move things out of it in order to access the code that's there. So I'm going to do that just by copying. I hit Control-C, and then I'm going to put it on the desktop here, Control-V, or right-click and paste, and there it is. Now there's a bunch of stuff in here. Two things that are important, though, are these templates. For most of our PHP apps, we're going to not use .html, which is the HTML extension. We're going to use .php, and that's important because .php is that extension signals to the server that it has to run PHP code. Okay, so I'm going to double-click that, and it will open in Visual Studio Code. Let me make it a bit bigger here. There we go. So this is your basic template. Okay, that's fine. This is your basic template for creating PHP web pages. Now the first thing I'm going to do is, though, I'm going to rename it and move it. So I'm going to copy it here, copy, and I'm going to move it. Now I now have a web server running on my local machine. Here it is right here. When I went to localhost 8080, it got me object not found because there's something wonky with my setup. You'll probably see a big XAMPP page there. This is taking me to a particular folder inside the XAMPP folder. So this is where your code has to go if you want to run it. So I go over to Windows, I go into XAMPP, and then there's a bunch of stuff in here. htdocs. You may notice that I put a right here a quick link to it. So I double click in here. This is the problem, is I seem to have deleted my dashboard folder in here. Definitely don't delete XAMPP, don't delete any of this stuff. What you're going to do is, these are two of my projects here. So I'm going to go new folder, and I'm going to create a Hello World project. And now that I've done that, I should be able to go to localhost 8080 Hello World, like that. And what it shows me is just a picture of the directory listing. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to copy, where were we? Over on the desktop, I've got my code. I'm going to copy the Control-C and then Control-V over here to copy the template over. And I'm going to rename it index.php. Now when I reload, I get this, which is what the rendering of index.php. So I'm going to double click this. I've got it hooked up to VS Code, so it's automatically going to open it in VS Code. All it is the template renamed. So this is what the code looked like. And hopefully you recognize pretty much everything in here. If you don't, you might need to go and brush up on your HTML and CSS. But this tells us that it's an HTML document. This tells us that this is the start tag for the page, the HTML page. This is some header information. There's a title here, which I should probably change to Hello World. Again, you should be following along with me here, okay? So pause, do the steps as I'm doing them, and then restart as necessary. So if I reload this now, you'll see Hello World appear up here. These are just some technical stuff. We can talk about that another time if we want. Most of what appears on the page is going to be inside the body section, and this is where you might see something that you don't recognize, this weird looking HTML tag. This is where your PHP code will go. Now I just want to show you something. If I right click here and say View Page Source, you'll notice that it looks similar but different from the page source over here. So this is the source from the server. When, as I said before, when the file is retrieved from the server, which it does by going through this address, which tells the server, I want a file in this folder. And since I didn't specify a file name, it's going to look for the index file. So it finds index.php and it returns that. But before it returns that, it runs the PHP code. So when we look at the source over here, this is the source that got sent to the browser by the HTTP response. And you'll notice the one thing that's missing is this. So the way this works is the server opens up this document and starts reading it. And this stuff, it just copy and pastes it into the HTTP response to send back to the browser. But when it gets to here, it says, aha, here's some code I have to execute now. So it does not send this code to the browser. It executes this code and sends the result to the browser and then continues. So that's why that doesn't appear there. And this has some funny indenting because it printed out it sent all these spaces, and then it didn't send any of this. And then it sent the body tag. So that's why there's some extra spaces here. So your code that you get here is going to look a little different than the code that you wrote. Now if we want this to be a Hello World program, we just need to print out Hello World. I'll go echo Hello World. So echo is the print statement in JavaScript, in PHP. it requires a quoted string and a semicolon at the end. I'm going to save that up here. Control S will save it. And when I reload the page over here, it says Hello World. And if you look at the code over here, notice the PHP code, the echo, the PHPs and everything did not go there. All that went there are the words Hello World, the output. So I'm literally writing a program here that prints out part of an HTML page. And this is actually not correct HTML because this Hello World should really be inside of a tag. So I'm going to print out the tag with it, p/p, for a paragraph. And when I reload, now it's inside a paragraph tag. Probably won't see much difference here. There you go, that's the output I'm reloading. So again, this is the page source, which you get by right-clicking and viewing page source. That's the source, that's the raw output of your program. And what you're looking at here is the way the browser is rendering that. So these three things are important. The source code that you write, the raw output of that source code, which becomes the source code for the browser page, and then how the browser page interprets that source code. And that's your Hello World program. Now you can change the tags. If I wanted to, I could put H1 tags in here. Hopefully you remember these tags. If I save that and reload over here, now it's the default browser styles for H1 are a little bit different. So it's an H1 tag now, so it looks like that. I can also, if I want to, I don't have to just put PHP here. I can put something like this. This is a normal HTML tag. Oops. Notice I'm getting a lot of help here from VS Code. When I do this, usually just hitting tab will close the tag for me. So now this has been entered. That should say normal, not normala. This is just regular PHP HTML code. This just gets copied directly in. So when I reload this, I now have two tags here. One was printed out using the PHP code, and one was just put there. And I can have as many PHP tags as I want here. So I can add another question mark PHP, question mark. So that's the start of the PHP tag, and this is the end of the tag. And I can put something else in here. I could say, here's another paragraph. Sorry if this is a bit boring, but there it is. Save that. And this time, so I'm going to put these in P tags, but this time I'm going to go P/P like that. So now I'm putting the opening paragraph tag, then I'm echoing the contents inside a PHP tag, and then I'm putting the closing PHP tag, P tag there. So it looks a little bit rough in the source code when you're doing view source for this page, but it just looks like a normal P tag over here, not a normal paragraph tag over here. Sometimes there's always a bit of a trade-off. Sometimes in your echo statements you want to output the tag. Sometimes it's easier to do that. Sometimes it's a better idea to just have your tags outside the PHP statement and put the contents in here. By the way, I can have multiple statements in here. I can have another echo, do you like it? And just think for a moment, if you want to pause for a moment and think about what's this going to look like on the page. Notice there's a single paragraph tag with both of these bits of content. If I reload it, I get that. Notice they're bunged together and there's not even a space there. So the echo statement doesn't output a carriage return at the end unless you explicitly put one. I could put a carriage return there like that. I could put a space there like that and reload. Now there's a nice space there. Over here in the output, if I reload that, it looks like that. I could also put a carriage return here if I wanted, but carriage returns don't do much for you. See, it looks exactly the same over here. Over here, you can see the carriage return in the output, but since browsers erase all white space and just turn them into a single space, that just becomes a single space here. Oh, excuse me. A single space over here. Pardon me. Okay, so that's just the basics. That's your Hello World program. I think that's as far as we're going here. Things I wanted you to see is that developing a PHP web page is the same as developing an HTML page, but you can embed these code tags. The code tags get executed on the server, so the browser never sees your code. The user never sees your code. They see the output of your code, and then that gets interpreted by the browser, and turns into a page here. Okay, so I hope you guys have created your own HTML page. Your own Hello World page. Oh, I should also mention too, styling and everything you know about styling and so on works in exactly the same way. So over here, I could create, let me create a new, I'm going to start it as a text document, but I'm going to change it to index.css. So this is going to be a CSS file. I can open this also using Visual Studio. I've linked all my types to Visual Studio, and I could make maybe a rule for paragraphs. Color red, font weight bold. Notice all the nice support I'm getting for VS Code here, including the exactly what the color looks like here, and so on. So now I have a CSS file to go with my PHP file. It doesn't make any difference here until I link it, which you do like this: link rel equals style sheet, href equals index.css. It's a relative link. Hopefully this will work. There we go. Okay, so you can link in CSS rules over here. I reload that, you'll see the link I put, and if you click on here, this is again the page source. If you click on here, you get to see the CSS file as well. So, so this is how you look at your raw output, and this is how you look at the interpretation of that output. So always do that. When you write a PHP program and it doesn't do what you expect, like it doesn't look right here, your very first instinct should be right-click, view page source, and take a look at your actual output to see if it was what you expected, because this is where you're going to find your errors. Okay, so that's Hello World. We'll move on to more about the PHP language in the next video.